To-do lists can be frankly overwhelming. If you're like me and you work a typical knowledge work job, you probably have more than 10 or 15 items on your list. And just having that much stuff to do can be overwhelming for a person. That's why systems like Getting Things Done were designed early on to help us sift through all of the clutter of the information age and all the information coming at us, to manage it, put it in its right spot. But for myself, I have always struggled with keeping on a Getting Things Done style system. And instead, I've wrestled for years on how to pull all of my stuff together. I've recently discovered an idea that's actually taken more out of the product management world that's helping me sift through timelines and tasks and things of that sort. And it's called Now, Next, and Later. We're gonna dive into that setup in today's video and how I'm specifically using that inside of Todoist. I wanna take a trip down memory lane. Maybe this is new for some of you, maybe it's something that's old hat. But the document on the screen here is the Getting Things Done workflow chart from the David Allen Company. Basically, the idea is you have all this stuff that comes in, you gotta figure out what it is, and then organize it by projects and plans and what's happening next and how to do it. A lot of this stuff is really good, but what ultimately ends up in practice is if you're using tools that are designed for it, like OmniFocus, Things, even Todoist to some degree, it can get really cluttered really, really quickly. Why? Because there's not really a great way in these tools to delineate, this is what I am focused on now. This is what I want to tackle next. This is something for later that I'm going to plan to do in the next 6 to 12 months. And then all the other stuff that needs to happen too, really at any time, but there's not really a deadline associated with it. It's not advancing the needle forward. I started off using tools like OmniFocus and Things, which are fully designed for a Getting Things Done style approach, OmniFocus in particular. And this worked for me for a while. However, as life got more complicated and things changed in my life, I kind of fell off the rails with a lot of it. And back in 2019, I fully abandoned basically a task manager altogether for something like the bullet journal method that you can see down here. And why is that? It's because I was getting overwhelmed managing all the digital tasks, all the organization that had to take place inside of a tool, when all I wanted to do is just have a list of things that I didn't have to manage that could help me figure out what I needed to do that day. But then over time, as I've gone in and out of the bullet journal, I was finding a lot of stuff that wasn't working for me there. And so I've been on this journey for really the last 5 years or so of trying to nail down what works for me. And I've realized within the last 6 to 8 months that in order to find something that works, I have to start abandoning the Getting Things Done methodology and mindset a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean that I am completely getting rid of all of these ideas. These ideas in their atomic form are really good. Being able to capture stuff and figure out what it is a really good process. But the typical way that we think about getting things done, at least the way that I thought about getting things done, is it's about managing a lot of little things and how it ties into bigger things and how those tie into bigger things. And this sort of bottom-up style of productivity really didn't help me sift through all of the little minutia and help me feel less overwhelmed. I know for some people, this is just my experience, for some people, getting things done really helps them, but that has not been my personal experience. And so what I have done is I've done a lot of reading, I've done a lot of looking, and I've encountered different ideas. And there's something that I've seen come up in the product management world that I think really applies to personal productivity as well. And this is this idea of a now, next, and later setup. So now, next, and later is really this idea of here are the things that I'm advancing now, what's on deck, and what is kind of out there, something that I'm targeting to look at in the next 6 to 12 months. So you can see here that I have my Todoist project set up, and unfortunately I'm not digging into that system just to keep everything private right now. But I wanted to show you at least a snapshot of how I have this set up. I don't have a ton of filters. I don't have a ton of other things going on right now. I'm largely using these projects to organize everything inside of my Todoist setup. The reason I chose Todoist for this versus another tool is, it's actually one of the reasons I was initially frustrated with Todoist, is that it's almost too flexible. Tools like OmniFocus and things are very opinionated apps, and as a result, they kind of do some hand-holding for you on how things should be set up. With Todoist, however, you have a lot of fluidity. And so I decided that for this type of setup, Todoist really worked the best because it has the level of flexibility for me to be able to build out the system in here in a way that's meaningful for me, where I can divide up information as I need to without getting overwhelmed by it. So let's dig into each one of these projects so you can get a sense of how I'm using it. So the Now project is a list of tasks and projects. Actually, in this project, I have a column for tasks and I have a column for projects that I am actively moving forward now. There are things that need to be on my radar. I maybe am not working on them every single day, but they're things that I am actively driving toward completion. And that is really what makes a Now project. You could say these are things that I'm doing this week, or if you do some sort of agile methodology, you could say these are the things that we're tackling in this sprint. But for me, it's a little bit more fuzzy because there are projects that go on longer than a couple of weeks. So I don't want to have a firm open and close date for what goes in this Now bucket. Next is all about items that I want to tackle in the near future. So when I remove a project from Now, I'm looking at my next list to say, these are the things that I'm tackling next. And also I'll move one from next into Now. And then later is really any items that are 6 months out. These are things that I am committed to doing in some way. So you can see here that I don't have many items right now in my later list, but I am working on building some of these things out. This doesn't encompass everything. Now, next, and later is really work that's trying to move the needle forward, but there are other things that I would like to do as well, or things that I want to track inside of my system. Anytime is one of those such lists. These are things that I can do literally anytime. There's no deadlines. This might be a random project around the house. This might be a hobby project that I have, such as building out a routine for learning how to play guitar or setting up an FPV drone. These literally have no deadline, and I can pull anything from this list anytime that I want to in my free time. Maybe is an idea from Getting Things Done, which is really an uncommitted list of items that I may or may not do in the future that I'll just groom through this. Again, I don't have a lot of stuff in here right now, but that will build up over time. So those are the main action lists here. I really only have 5: now, next, later, anytime, and maybe. But I have a few others that I'm tracking inside of Todoist that help this system kind of stay on track, which is people. These are reminders to connect with people. I network a little bit within the company that I work for and within the industry that I'm in. So it's just a reminder to check in with people every few months and see how they're doing, maybe set up a quick connect meeting. But it's also just a reminder for me to say, you know what, I haven't checked in with that friend of mine recently. I should probably do that. Goals, priorities, and checklists are relatively self-explanatory. Goals is literally just a list of goals for the quarter. Priorities is a high-level overview of things that are on my plate that align with what's going on now. And checklists at this moment in time is really just my weekly review checklist. Because as with every system like this, you do need to implement some sort of review process. You cannot just set it and forget it and totally Ron Popeil the heck out of it. You have to have some sort of cadence where you're going through each one of these projects, making sure that you're getting everything out of your head and into the system, and then organizing it in the way that makes the most sense. So again, looking back at this Getting Things Done flow chart, There's still a lot of that I'm doing. It just looks vastly different the way I'm organizing it and the way that my flow and process is working. And then lastly is routines. These are regularly scheduled items, things that come up every single day. Overall, this system is helping me cut through the overwhelm because there's this barrier of everything has to make it into this now bucket for me to actually advance it forward. The other benefit is I have a place where I can track all the things that come my way from people asking me for stuff. And I never lose it, even though I don't necessarily always do it right away, which is ultimately the trap. Building out a productivity system like this for yourself can be really challenging, and it can also really be impacted by the type of job that you have. And so if you're interested in learning more about the types of productivity systems that line up with the different types of careers, check out this video here.